All right, hi everyone. Welcome to our first Wednesday 101 webinar of 2024. We're excited to have Darren back here to school us on the circular economy. It's a big concept, but I think he's going to boil it down really simply for us so we can wrap our heads around it and maybe take some actionable steps to modify our lifestyle and maybe even start some projects. So Darren, welcome. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Leslie. Pleasure to be here with everyone today. Thank you again for inviting me to join. Schooling you, I'm not sure about that. We're going to keep this one pretty casual today, and at the same time, too. Once you guys manage your own mics along the way, you can come off of mute anytime you want to ask questions. You don't have to wait until I'm done, but I would say I'll probably have about 20 or so minutes of programming I can share with you here to kind of get some concepts across, and we can save the remainder of our time together for just back and forth things we want to dive into a little bit more deeply. I'm clearly not going to cover, the full expanse of it because we'd be here for a long time talking about all the different things we could look at. But we'll do some cherry picking today, and again, I'll at least kind of cover off on, hey, what is circularity in the circular economy? To Leslie's point, we'll figure out where it is that you can look to incorporate it just in your daily life as an individual. We'll talk about some of the trends around circularity and some of the things that are just timeless solutions that never go out of date. And again, wanted to kind of focus in on what I present today to be very action-oriented things you can leave with and kind of incorporate into to your daily life as we leave. And beyond that, to encourage all of you to say, and think through this with us, how can we create a movement out of this, right? How can we go out and ourselves today take something that we were inspired by and then look to inspire some others too? I will just do kind of a quick purview or kind of perusing of where I've been and who I am. Darren back again. I spent a long time with Sprint, the wireless company here in town, before it became T-Mobile. Spent my last 10 years of the time with the firm helping to spin up a sustainability program from scratch. Did it to great accolades. Came away as the third greenest company in the country for a couple of years running. And then spent the last 7 years or so working with a phenomenal organization called Sustainable Brands, helping to do much the same for a lot of the big brands around the world. Walt Disney, Procter and Gamble, the Ford Motor Company, across the board, about 90 to 100 different companies, helping them to kind of figure out how they could take their environmental and social efforts and use it really to drive innovation for the companies as they look to kind of pursue not only growth, but good growth as an organization, and then to kind of work collectively with each other to kind of address systemic problems, right, that one big company couldn't address necessarily just on its own. Beyond that, found myself wanting to kind of bring my time and talents and some of the networking and connections I've got back to Kansas City. So here I am today, about 5-6 months after having departed Sustainable Brands, and I am focused on doing all that I can to help gin up the circular economy here in Kansas City as I work with and team up with the Foundation for Regeneration here in town. And so this is an opportunity to come together with Leslie and her organization Re.Useful to kind of dive in and see where we can go from there.
Darren,
All right, so yeah,
can I
please.
just interrupt just for a second? I wonder if maybe people might be interested in dropping in the chat what interested them about this
Oh yeah.
particular webinar and the subject matter. I'm just kind of curious to see why people decided to spend some of their limited time with us today.
And as you do, I'll try my best to draw some through lines based on where your interest is and making sure we can dovetail into that too. I'll keep my eye on chat as we go along. All right, let's begin with some of the basics, and I'll start with Dame Ellen MacArthur as we try to kind of lay out the foundational tenets of the circular economy. Some of you might be familiar with her, some of you may not. She actually in 2005 was the fastest solo sailor to ever sail around the world, and came away with kind of a tremendous amount of interest on the nautical side. But interestingly, as she was out charting that course, think about that, 71 days at sea there overall, you got to pack your own fuel, you got to pack all your food, you got to pack all the supplies that are going to get you there. And she had a lot of time to think. I mean, kind of being at the mercy of nature to that great extent, kind of dwelling on, our place in the larger scheme of things, and how fragile not only things could turn out to be on that trip along the way, but take that as an analogy, right, for the world we all live in with finite resources and the ability to kind of find that balance with the world at large. All right, so I'm going to get a little wonky with you here, kind of going into nerding out on the circular economy and what that all means. So I'm going to kind of toss on the academic hat, a little bit of the professorial approach for Ellen there, and give you her insight. She was thinking about kind of the fuel that we all need. And it's not just about how we power our way through the world, but it's even about the materials we use. And her thought initially was what we're really living in today is a linear economy, right? Where we take what we need from the world, we make it into something that's useful, but by the time we're all done, it's pretty disposable. We just waste it. It's kind of all this sort of extractive process. And then as we get on with the use cycle, kind of just a very much kind of a disposable process along the way. It's like, oh, we'll just go take some more and make some more. But there's nothing really that allows much more than just kind of a through line there. And she thought, well, goodness, what could we do instead? How could we make a shift? So about 5 years after winning that kind of fastest sale around the world, she put her time and her resources into developing a foundation in her own name. It's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They really have been the ones who have propelled the concept of the circular economy forward, and is still kind of the bright light that everyone looks to along the way. And the diagram that you have here in front of you really kind of breaks it down to its simplest form, which is thinking about, rather than kind of seeing things in a linear process, what if we just kept it looping back around, and thought about the way we go about designing and kind of the products we use in the first place, with no waste in mind, right? Kind of designing them for this process of being used on a kind of an infinite loop, if we could, in many ways. So the idea from the circular economy standpoint from the front is to extract a whole lot less from the natural world and get to a point where we're using the materials we've already put a lot of time and energy and refinement into while we're around us, right? And then the idea is to keep them looping around, keep those products and those materials in use at their highest value we can, kind of find throughout the system. And then on the backside, thinking about how that really helps to regenerate the world around us. In nature, there is no waste. A leaf falls from the tree, it hits the ground, it becomes nutrients, right? And feedstock for the next kind of natural pass at the cycle of life. In many ways, again, if we can follow that with our own patterns, and even get to a point when we start, kind of moving away from a very extractive process with nature, right? Think about all the strip mining we do for coal, and all the strip mining we do for minerals, and all the ways we go about, in many ways, kind of plundering the earth to be able to get the resources and the energy we need. Kind of setting that land aside and not, kind of diving further into that relationship with the earth to allow for it to kind of restore itself, right? And what can we do as businesses, as individuals, to feed a process that goes about kind of restoring and regenerating the world around us naturally. All right, so that's it in a nutshell. Any questions about that generally before I hop into to the next portion? And while you think of that for a moment, I'm going to review the chat here as well. Good. Looks like everything dropped in chat. Does a pretty nice job of kind of finding that this is just an appealing concept to walk into. My main takeaway for you today, without being able to kind of go over and stand in front of a class of students at the university level, right, to be able to kind of break down the circular economy model and concept for them. If you can hold on to these thoughts afterwards, it kind of gives you the basic tenets. We're really looking for you to think about, do you need to buy that next item that you're thinking about, right? Is there a way we can kind of think about refusing to kind of fully buy into and fully kind of go with the flow of consumption as it's kind of presented to us today? Is there a way that you can maybe use less of it than you were previously, right? So for instance, maybe you don't need as much. can you find ways to hold on to those things that that again have temporarily stopped working, but maybe with a little bit of energy and a little bit of kind of advice and guidance, you could go about repairing them and keeping them in play. And a lot of what I'm going to focus on today is kind of enabling you to get that done. Thinking about reusing it, right? If you can't use it, might it be something that someone else can use? Might it be something that can be repurposed as something else altogether than it was originally kind of conceived to be? And then, of course, yes, certainly recycling if indeed some of those other options just don't seem to be less available. So I love that. Okay, Leslie, you were talking about a new book from the library, The Year of Less. Do you want to take a moment just to kind of talk about why that inspired you?
Yeah, I just thought that it sounded like a really great book to help us rethink our own behavior on a daily basis, and how to really make more thoughtful decisions about our consumer behavior. So I'm looking forward to reading it. I just finished Waste Free World, and then on to this one.
Love that. Again, kind of thinking about, or just giving, I think that's sort of the conscious capitalism, right? The conscious kind of consumerism is to say, there's nothing wrong with consuming. That's what we do every day. It's part of the natural cycle of life. But is it something that has to be, done with abandon, right? And done without some intentionality? And this is bringing a little bit more intentionality to it. All right. So as we go through this, I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown on what I'm doing here in Kansas City and why Leslie thought I would be the person to kind of walk you through what we have going on today. I am the studio lead for Circular KC. It's a project of the Foundation for Regeneration here in town, and looking to do all that I can to accelerate our adoption of a circular economy here locally in the KC metro area. So I'm looking to build awareness both through webinars like this today, but also with city officials and local influencers. In fact, the foundation within the last year or so teamed up with Metabolic, and I'll circle back to them in a moment, a consultancy out of Amsterdam that really has a specialization in helping cities to shift to the circular economy and putting together just kind of a basic tenets, sort of a circularity 101 webinar, much like this as well. Collaboration. We've got Diana here on the call today, and Diana is a new addition to the Mid-America Regional Council, and I think about the role she's taken on, kind of leading the way for the Mark's Solid Waste Management District, and just I think about the role she plays in town. I think about so many of the different partners, whether we're talking about kind of planning organizations regionally in town, much like that, communities at large, thinking about even some of the big brand players here in town, be it Hallmark or Helzberg Diamonds and all the rest. Thinking about solution providers who can come in and be able to kind of provide some of the aspects that we need to shift to these new technologies, and some of the timeless ones. Missouri Organic is clearly a good partner in town along those same lines, and even kind of thinking about funders, right? To build out this ecosystem that's required to make the circular economy work, you need all of them. And so we're trying to kind of find our way in there to kind of help set a collective vision for what it could be for the city. And at the same time, too, bring everyone together to start figuring out how it is we start collectively working towards that larger vision. A big piece of that is trying to figure out what we even have to work with in the metro area, just to start with. And so as we think about the materials, like what is it that we as individuals are consuming? What is it that businesses are consuming? What kind of materials are we constantly bringing in? And then when we're done with it, what are we left with, right? In terms of the materials, in terms of the categories of these different things, and we'll dive into several categories here along the way today in our webinar. But what happens to them afterwards, right? How much is ending up in the landfill? How much is being diverted towards kind of higher purposes along the way? How much is being reused? We're bringing in Metabolic, that firm from Amsterdam, to work with the city of Kansas City, Missouri, to begin with, and potentially with the Mid-America Regional Council here soon, and Solid Waste Management District, and certainly Johnson County's expressed some interest in that too. But to start kind of taking a look at a baseline, right? What kind of materials do we have to work with? And how might we repurpose those into businesses that are creating new jobs and helping to kind of harvest that material and put them towards this ability to kind of just keep them looping into the marketplace as well. We're talking about product transformation, just as Dame Ellen MacArthur had kind of shared that from the very beginning, we just have to change our mindset about how we design products. We're bringing folks like Pentatonic, which is a design firm based out of London and Berlin, and to have conversations with folks like Hallmark to say, if you are designing products from the get-go so that they're circular on the backside, what does that look like? What do you even kind of begin the design process looking like on the front end? We're going through and we're thinking about local capacity building, right? We've got a lot of these efforts underway from a curbside recycling standpoint to begin capturing materials, but it wasn't until, for instance, we had an opportunity to introduce the city of Kansas City, Missouri, to the closed loop fund, and then they kind of moved them on to the recycling partnership. They got $5.5 million of financing at 0% interest to put curbside recycling out there for 500,000 people in Kansas City to begin with, because up until that time, just even kind of capturing the material was a bit of a challenge. So how are we kind of ginning up efforts to make sure that we've got a way of even capturing that material before it heads to landfills as a whole? Two more here, and then I'll kind of move on. Business support. We got a lot of folks in town who are already doing great business. They might be kind of smaller firms that have, maybe say 25 to 100 employees. Great concept, great idea. We just need to scale them out. So we've introduced some groups like Missouri Organic, Urban Lumber here in town, Ruby Jean's Juicery, and some of the folks are kind of, again, focused on circularity, kind of focused on social impact, and brought them in touch with a national economic gardening group that provides them consultation on job creation and growth over time to take these great concepts and just make them bigger, put them in greater play. And then finally, how do we bring funding in? And there's a tsunami of federal funds out there these days to help kind of keep this kind of movement going and help us make that shift economically. So we're working with folks like Quantified Ventures and the rest to be able to kind of figure out what we can do to rope some of that money in and bring it back here locally to put it into play. So with that, again, big mouthful, a little bit about what the Circular KC project is all about and where my focus is going. But any questions you might have there before I bring it back down to our daily lives?
I have a quick question.
Please go for it, listen.
So how much of the focus, you're talking about really expanding the market in the area and creating more businesses. What's kind of the proportion when it comes to small businesses versus, mid-sized to large? I guess that's my question.
It's a great question. First, I'm going to maybe put a bit of a regional pin on the map. A lot of where the Foundation for Regeneration is looking to put the time and effort and a lot of the investment that we're focusing on is the Blue River Valley within KCMO. Again, think about a place that's been sort of the ecological heart of the metro area, and over time has been in decline. If you think kind of decades leading up to where we're at here currently, both from an environmental standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and even from a social standpoint, that kind of social fabric has been damaged through disenfranchising, generations from a lot of wealth, through redlining that's been happening in that district, from a real estate standpoint on into jobs leaving that area where it was once kind of a booming industrial area as a whole. So what we're trying to figure out is how we can go about bringing regeneration, those principles of regeneration, back to that particular area and across the metro, but again with a little extra special love for the Blue River Valley area. As a part of that, we're thinking, Alyssa, a lot of these concepts are already being pursued by small businesses in the area. So all that we can do to kind of take those small businesses and give them the support that they need to kind of move things up. I think about like Canby's Markets. I think about KC Can Compost. I think, just as a couple of examples of some social ventures that are both addressing this, but trying to kind of bring in job creation for those who are underemployed and kind of provide, assistance and an opportunity in that manner. So looking to support that, but we also are seeing opportunities to be able to bring technology that exists outside of Kansas City and attract them and kind of woo them in here and say, listen, you've got a community that's open to these kind of new concepts. We'd love to be able to kind of see what they can do for economic development in this area, as well as the ecological health and community empowerment that comes with it too. So it's on all scales, right? supporting the small businesses that are here, encouraging more small businesses that have ideas to kind of lean into it, and at the same time to kind of bringing in some of these kind of tried and true and maybe some cutting edge solutions from outside the KCMO area to kind of get them to set up shop here too. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, let's bring it down to kind of a personal level, and let's think about, generally, what is it that we're throwing away as a whole, right? If you look at municipal solid waste, what's heading out to the landfill today? And these are national figures, right? These are from the Environmental Protection Agency, and I think the last really good data that they've got on this in terms of breaking it down was about in 2018. So that's what you see kind of directed here as a whole. And so I'm going to look at a few of these categories. Again, you can look at containers and packaging. We could talk about that all day long. Food waste is sort of the second kind of largest amount that goes in there. A really pernicious problem in terms of the fact that so much and most of the methane that's kind of coming from landfills these days is coming either from the food waste or that next category around yard waste as a whole. And even to today, the Johnson County landfill folks, they're bottling some of it up, but they're still flaring. I would say almost maybe 40% of the methane that's coming out of there today as it is. So it's not all being captured and kind of reused for clean energy. With that, again, durable goods with those things you buy and you hang on to and you use for a long time. Non-durable things that are a little bit more temporary in terms of what we're holding on to. But if you looked at the trash cans that are in place today and you kind of cracked them open and looked at what was inside, it breaks down roughly like this. So what we're going to talk about as we go through this time together, let's talk about food waste. I'll get in there and kind of dive into that for us for a little bit. But I will also then, and I'm talking about more on the residential side, right? Things we're generating in our own house. We can talk a little bit about clothing, talk a little bit about kind of shoes and footwear overall as a whole. And we're going to dive into a little bit around electronics. From an electronic standpoint, they're not a major component, major constituency of how this all breaks down in terms of volume and all the rest. But when you think about the expense that we take on in terms of buying them in the first place, and the amount of critical materials that happen to be in those electronics, they're a special area or aspect of municipal solid waste we should be taking a closer look at. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at some furnishings and furniture, just to kind of figure out what we can be doing around each of those. So again, if you want to dive into some of these other aspects and categories when I'm done with the presentation, feel free. We can go a little bit closer and dive in. All right, food waste. We all got it. We all probably buy a little bit more than we need to. We probably throw away a lot more than we intend to. And the question is, can we get creative about it? You could do a little bit of a throwback, right? I'm sure that many of you have been to a potluck dinner and or grown up in a household where this might have been the place. But yeah, those pimento olives, sure. It's use up your leftovers in a Jell-O salad week. How about that? Should we bring that back into play and kind of there's more stuff floating around in that gelatin than I think my stomach can handle here during this brown bag lunch. But I will say that, one thing that I can point you to is something that the Mid-America Regional Council and our friend Matt Riggs over there and his team has spent a lot of time and energy putting together. And that is my first recommendation to you from a local level. And I'll try to mix this up. Some of you may not be from the Kansas City area joining today, and if that's the case, I'll bring some national links and content to you here too. But locally within the KCMO, Kansas City metropolitan area, kcfoodwise.org. Think about it as sort of like your one-stop shop for anything you'd want to think about in terms of how you can go about taking an active role in better managing the food waste in your fridge, or in your community as a whole. And that can go from, planning when it comes to like even before you head out to the store, thinking about what you need to get ahead of time, looking to see what's in the fridge and in the pantry. From a shopping standpoint, kind of thinking about how you go about shopping in the first place, how you might store it, making sure at least when you store it, you can kind of keep track of what you have in some of the containers you're holding on to over time, how you prepare it, how you go about eating it. And then, if you have a little bit more than you need to, the pantry's been full with a lot of canned goods over time or other ways you can go about kind of sharing the wealth. it's an opportunity to figure out where you can find a rehome for some of that. And at the very end of the day, even tips around how you can do backyard composting, how you can go about finding compost locations all around the metro area as a whole. It's great stuff. With that, oh goodness, I'm skipping ahead a little bit too much. One of the fascinating things I've seen over the last year is this really quick advance of products that have come to the marketplace that you can set right in your kitchen. Now, this can be pricey. It's not something that's going to be for everyone. You know, many of you might have some composting you're doing in the backyard, but even if not, in this particular case, if you're living in an apartment or the rest, you can look at things like the Lomi or the Mill, which are on the product on the marketplace. One that I've kind of found a little bit more user friendly as of now is called the Wrinkle, and it will take your food waste and within about 24 hours or so, will go about turning it into something that is garden ready. It will dry it. You know, it's odorless in terms of, you know, the opportunity to kind of store this in your kitchen. It's about the size of a trash can, maybe a smaller trash can you might keep in the kitchen as a whole. So it'll not only dry it out, but you kind of begin with this sort of bacteria activator at the bottom. So when it's all through, maybe as compared to Lomi or the Mill, yes, it's dry, but it's ready to go in terms of having you know, a very active microbial community that's ready to go compost that can be put right into your garden bed and the rest. So there are options that are making composting a lot more convenient, especially when you kind of think about, you know, we've tried a few products that will attract some fruit flies in the kitchen and all the rest, but this is something that gives you the opportunity to kind of really plug it into your daily life to a little greater degree. I think these run about $500, and you can see a range of probably somewhere between $300 to $500 for a lot of the products that are out there as of now. But keep your eye on them. There are some options for you to kind of weave into your daily life that way. I'm kind of fascinated by a local partner that we're working with, and the opportunity to think about a new trend that's on the horizon, maybe a new or old trend, but the idea is biochar. At the end of the day, composting still provides some off-gassing of you know, carbon into the atmosphere. You start off with about 100% of the mass that gets composted. You result with about 60% that's left. And some of that carbon still kind of escapes off into the atmosphere. And again, for many of you kind of tracking climate change, you know that we want more of it down here than up above. But as a part of that, biochar is this process of going through and through a pyrolysis, which is essentially burning any kind of biomass material without oxygen. You actually are capturing, I would say, around 90% plus of the carbon in place, and you get it sequestered in a form where it will stay as this kind of biological charcoal, biochar, for hundreds, potentially up to 1,000 or more years. And it is thirsty stuff. It'll soak up moisture beautifully, and you can load that moisture up with nutrients. Kind of think about it sort of as like a compost tea that kind of just soaks right into that, and you can add it in as a soil amendment that really allows for plants to thrive, because over a period of time they can always kind of reach that moisture that they need, and they can find the nutrients kind of readily available for them in that form. I've come to find there are a lot of additional uses for biochar along the way that can, you know, work their way into building materials. You can find that it actually will generate energy along the way in a carbon negative fashion as a whole. So one of these biochar generators, for instance, could power up to about 50 different homes if it were kind of attached and deployed in a community as a whole. But biochar is kind of a fascinating concept of, again, kind of thinking about how you can take something's food waste or yard waste and kind of put it into a product form, right, that allows it to kind of continue on and kind of keep looping through there as a whole. Let's see. Let's talk about clothing. Let's talk about footwear. I don't know if any of you might have grown up in the 70s or even after that, how much long it lasted. But for me, man, I was tough on jeans. In fact, what was it? Sears ran a line of jeans for kids for a long time called Tough Skins, right? And the knees blew out of my jeans all the time. And here my mom is with the iron, kind of sewing these little denim patches on there back and forth, right? So thinking about kind of keeping our clothing in play, let's go back to the future, right? I don't know if any of you have had the great opportunity to meet Alex Jacobs here in the recent years. I've had a chance to come across her at some of the Earth Beat markets that have been in place. In fact, that's where I first met Mac, as we had a chance to come to her. Alex is both doing garment repair, but she falls into a category that people often refer to as visible mending. So this is not repairing clothing so it kind of looks just like it did when it was new, but it's kind of, an artist putting their style into how they go about mending clothing in a way that is kind of fashionable and kind of makes a bit of a statement there along the way. So again, whether it's blowing out the seat of your jeans or kind of keeping some items that you've had for a long time in play that you're not ready to get rid of yet. Think about someone like Alex who can come in to help out. Another thing that she does, which is a bit more of a community feel, and I think puts us, just like many of us kind of crave that closer connection with nature, kind of puts us back in touch with community and nature to a greater degree. It's the community workshop she does around indigo dyeing. Indigo is a natural dye that comes from kind of a plant-based source, and it's a bit of a magical process. You kind of put it into this vat of liquid that looks a little bit green, maybe not too far, apart from Mountain Dew. And by the time you pull it out and it's all done, it turns into this beautiful kind of rich, deep blue indigo color. So your ability again, kind of put hands on the process, do it yourself, breathe life into old clothing with kind of a new look and something that kind of you can feel sort of both engaged in and hands-on around and do within kind of a community is always kind of a fun approach too. But just kind of think about our relationship with our clothes and how can we kind of keep a loving relationship with them for a little bit longer period of time. If you're looking for visible menders, and again, if you're not from the Kansas City area, you can find them across the world. There's a website called visiblemending.org. And here in the States, you're looking at, probably 20 or 30 of them who are advertising here currently. And another way just to kind of get in touch with somebody who might be able to help you out locally. A fascinating new trend that I've kind of seen is, again, thinking about from a production standpoint, how we can take, interestingly enough, all of the oil that we're wearing. So much of our clothing in our closet, it actually is derived from petroleum. When you think about polyester and you think about many of the other kind of elements that go into making up the outfits that we wear, and oftentimes it's not pure polyester. We've gotten into these kind of poly cotton blends, right? And the question becomes, how do you take something that might otherwise end up being a rag or might be something that isn't quite finding maybe its highest value for circulating through the economy? How do you find a way to kind of be able to pull those elements back apart so that you can recreate our clothing again? I would say the Ellen MacArthur Foundation says we probably wear, on average, the outfits that we buy about 7 to 10 times before we decide that we're ready to pass them along. Hopefully not to the landfill, but maybe to someone else. The question then becomes, do we have to continue to raise more cotton? Do we have to continue to go out and find more oil to make the clothes we need? The folks at Cirque, who I'm kind of putting here before you today, they would essentially attest to say all the clothing we would ever need to make moving forward can be made from the clothing that's already in the marketplace. They have found a way to go after breaking this down kind of from a molecular standpoint to kind of pull apart the polyester from the cotton so that those lines can be kind of fed right back into more textiles, right? More clothing for the future. So again, thinking about wearing the same molecules for life, right? When we can kind of keep the clothing that's already in play for generations yet to come. All right. Any more questions about that before I move on to the next category? All right. Electronics, man, I tell you that one's going to stump a lot of people, right? The one we're probably most intimately familiar with is our phone, cracked screens, or maybe the TV that just kind of conked out on us before we thought it should have stopped working along the way. But I tell you what, no scaredy cats here, right? We're gonna look at it. We're gonna make sure that we're gonna be up for the task. And you don't have to decipher it on your own. You don't have to pull out the duct tape right away, right? You can look at some other options as well. One in particular I'm going to point you to is a gentleman I had a chance to meet in Washington, D.C. It was a little over a decade ago. His name is Kyle Weens. At that time, I was managing the cell phone reuse and recycling program for Sprint, and we would often get together with others, Sony Electronics and the rest, about how to keep these electronics in play for a longer period of time. Well, Kyle was this big advocate of democratizing repair. Democratizing repair for all of us, to essentially say, so many of these companies, even if we wanted to repair it, don't make it easy. They create like screw heads that you have to have a specific type of screwdriver to be able to kind of pull off, off the phone to fix it, or a Keurig coffee machine that's kind of gone south. So over time, if you go to ifixit.com, what he's been able to build over the last 20 years is through sort of a peer-to-peer community, over 102,000 manuals that are free on how to go about repairing just about every electronic that you're going to come across in your life. And so as a part of that, they've had over 100 million repairs being done across this country and around the world in terms of people who've been able to use this. If you're needing tools, again, that are specified tools that the manufacturers might require to get a certain, again, screw or hinge out of place with a Keurig machine, as an example, again, you can buy those through the site there too. But you can see the wide array of all the categories that you can lean into to find these guides for. But do know, from a do-it-yourself standpoint, you can do this. This is something that's within your scope, within your capability. And check out iFixit. It's kind of a fun one there as a whole. In addition to that, you know what? There's some chances where you might not necessarily have the time or the interest to take it on yourself. Usually within a local area, you can find somebody who can do those repairs for you. And I'm thinking about someone just beyond kind of repairing a cracked screen for a phone. This is one group that I'm more familiar with, and worth checking out if you're willing to take a quick trip to Lawrence, Kansas, down the road. Prab Aurora is working with Budget Repair. He's right off of Mass Street, and he'll take on a wide range of electronics there as a whole that you can go over and take in to kind of keep it in play, whether it's an old game console or a TV that's just kind of shorted out on you. Again, the idea would be kind of keeping those items in play rather than going out and buying new and extending the life there as a whole. You don't have to just do it here in the Kansas City area. If you have a Best Buy area, feel free to take a look at them. Again, a wide range of different products that they can help you out with, from your portable audio systems to a lot of your major appliances and your smaller appliances. They've got the ability to kind of lean in and help you to kind of keep them working along the way. All right, that brings us to the last of the categories, and we're going to break to just kind of a free-form discussion of whatever we didn't touch upon or whatever interests happen to be there. And I love seeing things so active in chat as they are here currently. But let's talk about furniture. Let's talk about furnishings, right? Say you got a tear in that couch. Say that the cushion isn't quite working right. How hard can it be? I'm sure we can all come up with a solution that works. Just kind of a little bit of sweat equity there, and you can find something you can repurpose, but maybe not quite this way in your house. There is a good source that I can turn you on to if you go to Home Talk, which is a wonderful resource online that can help new homeowners out with a wide range of things. But in particular, they've got a section on furniture repairs. It's a lot easier than you think, right? Whether it again be that some tear in a leather couch, or even, gosh, I can't tell you how many camp chairs it seems like we continue to accumulate over time, only because one seems to have like a rip in it or something of that nature. So again, great resource for you able to kind of look at and figure out how you can go ahead and take on some of those projects yourself. But maybe that's beyond you. Maybe you've decided that new piece of furniture is for you, and you want to be able to kind of give a good home to one that you no longer need or might be out of fashion to your latest sensibilities and the rest. Want to make sure that you're aware of a great source in southern Kansas City, that in the southern metro area, and that's Flourish Furniture Bank. And not only will they come over and collect those pieces for you, but they will go about making sure that they are repaired if need be, and made ready and available to use again. And they offer them to folks who essentially are seeking housing stability. They might be transitioning out of homelessness or some other severe life challenges that they've been up against. But what they provide is they provide a dignified shopping experience. It'd be just like for those folks, I'm going to walk into a large furniture store where we can find everything from lamps to coffee tables to credenzas and drawers for your clothing and couches. They give you all of the opportunity to be able to kind of figure out what do you need to furnish your home, because so many of those individuals who are making that transition find that they're moving into spaces, but spaces that are unfurnished and really don't have the opportunity to kind of allow for many of the basic things that we all take for granted. Furnish is a phenomenal resource here locally. Whether you want to volunteer with them to kind of help out on a regular basis or donate to them, they would be more than happy to kind of keep your furnishings going and cycling through the community there as a whole. They're not the only furniture bank around. You can find, again, nationally, if you're not here in the Kansas City area joining us for today's webinar, opportunities to figure out where there might be a furniture bank like Flourish in your neck of the woods. Just go to furniturebanks.org and you can find very similar locations around the Canadian provinces and here in the US. All right. Last but not least, I'm going to be teeing up Leslie here. If you're looking for a one-stop solution, keep your eye on the undumpster days, and also at any moment in time on reuseful.org. Leslie's giving you opportunities to be able to find a match for whatever items that you have that still have a good life in them, but no longer have a life with you in your home, and to pair them up with an amazing array of nonprofit organizations that can put them to use. They can really give them a good home, help them to find an extended life there as a whole. So you can go onto the website at any given time to find that kind of matchmaking process between what you have to offer up and who's ready to receive it. And you can have some choice in terms of whether it goes to this type of charity or that type of charity. But beyond that, Leslie's often out in the community with undumpster days. And so if you want to just kind of load up the truck, load up the minivan, and to kind of bring it all out to a single location to have the nonprofits who'll show up, you might have up to about 20 who come out to a undumpster day, Leslie, who are ready to kind of find a path for many of those items and give them a new life. That is a local, beautiful local asset that we can all be taking advantage of on a regular basis. So again, just kind of getting your mind sort of set around what is circularity, what are some actions that you can take individually, what are some categories you can be kind of thinking about in new ways. Again, I'm focusing today primarily on repair and reuse, because I think a lot of us get a lot of attention and time put towards recycling here along the way too. But kind of brings me to the end of what I have prepared here for you all today. But my question would be, where would you like to take the conversation next? What maybe didn't we talk about, and what would you like to dive into a little bit more to discuss? I can't guarantee I'll have all the answers, but I'd love the conversation.
So Darren, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So I took a class on edX on Intro to the Circular Economy. It was video based. It was great, and it was free. So that was awesome. Also, Ellen MacArthur Foundation is an amazing resource. They have all kinds of publications and other sorts of resources that people can further, if they like, I'm intrigued, I want to learn more. Where else would you suggest that people pay their attention to try and ramp up their knowledge on the circular economy?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of it depends on where you want to lean in. If you want to lean in from a business standpoint, or if you want to be able to kind of think about it as an individual. As a business, one thing that I might suggest is Green Biz. Once a year puts together a circularity conference, one that's going to be happening this year, I think, in Chicago in May. And it's a great place to be able to kind of find both some networking around others who happen to be focused in around circularity, again, whether it be from a funding standpoint or whether it be about somebody who's got solutions that they can provide for your business, or really give you a platform to talk about what you might be doing as a company there as a whole. So that's a kind of a great community to get plugged into along the way. In addition to that, you can find, as an example, the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, is going to be pulling together one of the first North American conferences on circular cities. So again, if you're thinking about it from a community standpoint, where can I begin kind of plugging into a community where I can learn from others who are doing the much of the same thing from a municipal standpoint as a whole. That's coming up toward the end of February this year. So again, that's one I'll likely be heading off to with Brian Weinberg over at the Foundation for Regeneration. So those are a couple of examples, but beyond that, I think what I'm coming to find is that every industry kind of has its own sort of niche, right? Like, so one group that's gone headlong into circularity is fashion. Oh my gosh, if you look at, I don't know how many of you guys are getting Temu ads all the time. Buy a blouse for, like $2.99, or, buy this for, I mean, just such a small amount of money for something that seems like it's, kind of great value, but people may only, wear once or twice, right? So fast fashion is just kind of a huge issue, and they're getting dinged about that as an industry quite a lot. So circularity around textiles and fashion has really become something that's accelerated there unto itself. So you can find that depending on whatever industry you happen to be in or whatever passion you might have for it, usually at this point in time, there are different lanes kind of opened up around specific materials and specific, kind of design processes that are in place as well. But beyond that, I'd be curious what the group here today has come across. Have you come across some other good kind of circularity communities or educational resources that you would point us to?
I mentioned it earlier, but the Waste Free World, I thought was a really great book, very accessible. Talks about a lot of the things that touch us every day, and I would recommend it.
Fantastic. Another person who's been a bit of an original thought leader in this space, kind of learned from Buckminster Fuller, just as Bob Berkebile, again, one of the co-directors of the Foundation for Regeneration here in town, did too. His name is Bill McDonough, and Bill, before Ellen kind of leaned in and started up the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, think about the circular economy. Bill was writing about cradle to cradle, which that kind of whole C2C process is a whole design philosophy, which is about, again, kind of not cradle to grave. Once something begins, you have a chance to kind of keep it looping through, keeping it kind of in a circular fashion. So even some of the writings that Bill's done around cradle to cradle would be kind of a phenomenal area, and kind of, again, a whole community built around that too.
And you mentioned Bob Berkebile, who is a world-renowned architect from Kansas City, and I was so pleased to see him mentioned in the Waste Free World in
Yes, he was.
the buildings chapter. So that was a treat.
What other ideas, topics, thoughts come to mind as you guys process what we've talked about today? I love, as a community, how even on this webinar, we're all supporting each other to such a great extent on chat, kind of providing each other kind of, access to resources and validation, and just kind of, our own personal intentions we put about, how we go about our daily lives and the intentional decisions we're making too.
I know that, some people may be making a lot of very intentional decisions, but I'm just wondering if anyone here has decided to turn over a new leaf as a result of maybe the information that Darren's just shared. No pressure, just, curious.
I'm going to take a moment to turn that thought on its ear for a moment and say not only what individual inspiration might you have taken. Marcia, why don't you go first, and then I'll finish out my thought. What comes to mind for you, Marcia?
I was having a conversation with one of my neighbors here recently, and you mentioned something about the quality of things that people buy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so many trades have just gone to the wayside, like shoe repair and upholsterers.
Yeah.
And people got to start buying quality stuff for this to work, so that you buy a sofa, it's worth reupholstering.
I think that's exactly right. I'm somewhat encouraged, Marcia, by seeing groups like the Designer Shoe Warehouse. I think they've got about 500 locations across the country, and with that, any of those locations you walk into, you can bring your shoes, purses, any kind of accessories, leather accessories that might need to be mended back in, and they have folks who they've teamed up with a group that does those repairs, so that becomes something that you can have readily available in kind of local communities, right, where that's available. But yeah, just being able to find someone like Alex, right, or the rest who are ready to kind of just lean in and make a profession at kind of keeping what we've got in play. And with your original thought, Marcia, again, I think that's right. Got to buy something that's worth repairing in the first place, right? Some of the stuff is so poorly made. Is it repairable, and is it worth the time to do that? And that's a whole part of the process too, in terms of how we decide what we're going to bring into our lives.
How do we get people to think differently?
I think it starts with each of us, and I think in many ways we become a bit of an example for those around us. I love kind of pointing out when I can that our mantle, we bought this 100-year-old home, and the mantle over the fireplace was just kind of this cold, sterile piece of concrete slab, right? I kept thinking it'd be kind of nice to warm it up a little bit. When we decided to do something about it, we connected with a group called Elmwood Timber out south of town, and they take barns that have been fallen down, and they take that barn wood and they repurpose it into amazing tables and all the rest. And we had them just kind of create a little cap that kind of looks like this big wooden timber now that's over our fireplace, but it's really just a couple of pieces of barn wood kind of pull together with some good carpentry. And again, it comes back to the tradesman, kind of like the trades crafts, right? Of who knows how to do upholstering, who knows how to repair shoes, who knows how to do kind of good carpentry and kind of repurpose things. I think there's good work to be done in it. I think more people will find that there's Marcia, I feel like it's coming back to connecting it. You create community that way. I feel like I'm in touch with someone who's working with their hands, and it's not something that's kind of mass produced, and I can feel that person's love and attention and effort that went into it, right? And I think it kind of almost brings us back into community, and I feel like that draws us together, right? I don't know that everyone's going to feel like that, but I feel like that's compelling by having that individual touch.
Yeah, and I think that we'll hopefully be creating some of that with our repair cafes that we're launching in 2024. So we're excited about those, and hoping to provide some of those important repairs that maybe. I put in the chat, I'm gonna learn to sew. 2024 is the year I learned to sew. But some people don't know how, don't have a machine, aren't interested, but don't necessarily want to replace instead of repair. So I think there's an opportunity there we're getting really close to time, and I know I personally have a 1 o'clock meeting that I have to get to, but I wondered if there's anybody had any last thoughts. Darren, you want to take us out?
Well, and that's just about, a movement. Thoughts? What if someone had, kind of a couple words they'd put to it? How do we create a movement around this, right? What do you feel like allows us to kind of get others inspired about that, even with little acts we take? Any thoughts about how to get that movement going?
I say
Jay?
be intentional. Be intentional
Oh,
what we're doing. And
love that.
intentional is the word. So
I'm going to say be intentional and be vocal about being intentional. Tell people why you chose to be intentional.
for sure.
Who else? Jay, that was great. With Jeff, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I was just very thankful for your sharing today, Darren. And what I made a note to myself, I really like your message and how it appeals to younger audiences, because the things that you talked about are just personal choices every day, from food to clothing. I think sometimes the environmental message can get to talk about international issues and how power generation is happening. And it can feel a little apart from
Out there.
a high school kid. And I think your content was really powerful, and the local, to me, I also think that helping people see that even their local community is active and doing something about these issues, is it again drives home that you can be a part of this. You can take pride in your community, your company, for stepping forward, and it lends credence to kind of the tipping of getting somebody involved.
Jeff, I don't know if it gets any better than that. I think, Leslie, that feels like an amazing summary to me. And alongside Leslie, I'll offer up my gratitude to each of you for being here today, being engaged, and all the ways that you look to take action moving forward.
And thank you so much, Darren, for being here and putting this presentation together in a way that is really easy to wrap your head around, and think about it through the lens of your daily life. I think that, Jeff's comment was right on the money, and it's sometimes hard to shrink, that problem down to a place where you think you can do some action on it. So thank you all for being here. We'll send the recording out and some of the resources we mentioned, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everybody.
Thank you.